honor for us to today have with us a professor of excellence and a professor emeritus, Dr. K.L. Bhatia, who will be delivering a lecture on formulating and testing of hypothesis. Professor Emeritus Dr. K.L. Bhatia has done his law from ILS Pune and he has done his LLM and PhD from Pune, and he is a senior professor of law. He is a former head and dean faculty of law and founder director of the Law School of University of Jammu. He has been the director of Amity Law School and a founder, dean, and professor emeritus College of Legal Studies UPES Dehradun. He has also held a prestigious position like professor of National Law University, Jodhpur. He has traveled in India and abroad in pursuit of academics. He has over 4 decades of teaching and research experience. He has authored and edited over 20 books on various research subjects of law, both doctrinal and heuristic, including a book on poetry as well in both Hindi and English, and over 100 research published articles in leading peer legal journals of repute and in India and abroad. His area of interests are constitutional law, administrative law, human rights, research methodology, legal methods, and legal language and legal writing. He has delivered extensive lectures on legal research methodology and legal writing as a visiting professor at the Indian Law Institute, New Delhi, international taxation law and tax negotiation treaties at the International Trade and Economic Law at the UNDP in as a public law in Africa. He, on invite, has delivered extensive notable lectures on expounding constitutionalism, challenges and perspectives, research methodology, federalism, and judicial nuances. He has a leading book on the precepts of Dharma-prudence, and he has also delivered many lectures on state of conflicts in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. During the pandemic of COVID-19, he has delivered extensive webinars on international crimes against humanity, international human rights in fight with COVID-19, and human rights to life and dignity of the dead person. Sir is known to be a man of three L's, that is, law, literature, and life. He is a recipient of ICSSR, UGC, Jammu and Kashmir State, UN and ILO Human Rights Fellowship. He is a DAD and Max Planck Fellowship Fellow of Heisenberg, Germany as well. It is an honor to have you, sir, today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abhinav Kumar, for such a detailed introduction. First of all, I am grateful to Dr. Anindya, with whom I have a good association, academic and personal, while at National Law University, Jodhpur. I am also grateful to the Vice Chancellor of the university extending me the invitation to deliver a talk on hypothesis formulation and testing of hypothesis. Before I start with my lecture, I shall like to make it clear that I do not know how many of the faculty members have referred or referred to the literature which concentrates on this particular hypothesis formulation and testing of hypothesis. I vividly remember when I started with my doctorate work and accepting the challenge from the living legend in law, Professor Upendra Bakshi, that I should do empirical research. I had never heard the name of empirical research or social sciences research in law, etc. Anyhow, at that time I was at Department of Law, HP University, Shimla. I formulated the research problem and he was in Australia. I sent him by post at that time. In my time, email facility, etc., computer, etc., was unheard. I posted him, and after 1 month, I received a good pages reply from him. What is a hypothesis? What is empirical research? Which became a guru mantra for me. and he mentioned my work in his book published by ICSSR. I am obliged to him and grateful to him. Therefore, what I would like to share with you that I show you the book Stuart S. Nogale. This is a very important book which every scholar, teacher in law must refer to, and the title of the book is The Legal Process from Behavioral Perspectives. This is very important. Well, in my time, no computers were there, no electronic typewriters were there. It was only manual typewriter which was there. And in our physics department of the university at Jammu, a huge room was constructed to store computer. How to see the computer, I was unaware. And a physics professor, I remember, he introduced me and my work to the computer and my familiarity with the computer. And I collected data this way, that way. And in my time, that since I was the first research scholar in law applying social sciences research techniques in law, and then how to tabulate data, those the cards, punch cards, they were known punch card. I used to purchase from the stationery book, and then I stored them, and then data was interpreted by the computer, and the computer man helped me. This way, I got introduced to computer and interpreting the data through computer. This was the beginning, and I still remember one of my this head of the department at the time at the university lent me a book, Application of Computer in Law. That was the first book I read, and I was not aware what this book is. And his beginning sentence was, what is the language of computer in the application of law? And he started garbage in and garbage out. I was puzzled what he talks, garbage in and garbage out. Then I asked the head of the Department of Physics, what does it mean? He said, as you feed the computer, computer will give back the results in the same fashion. If we put garbage feeding to the computer, computer will revert back the garbage only. Therefore, we have to be very cautious. And here I would give a caution to all the participants, particularly. I think, and I can give as a professor of my age, that don't rely too much on Google Baba. I call it Google Baba. And the sources which you get for reading, that must not be wholeheartedly applied. Look to the original libraries, the works, monumental works are there. And that will give you the idea how the research empirically is to be conducted. Then myself and Professor S.C. Srivastava, my long friend and colleague, now he is in America, we wrote a book, I show you, legal research, a legal method, research, reasoning, and research methodology. This is published by Regal Publication, New Delhi, and we have discussed thoroughly what does this non-empirical, which we call doctrinal research, and this your particular empirical research, all these things is contained there and must read it. These are my this PowerPoints, which I was not able to pass on to Dr. Anindya because of my own compulsion. You know, professor is obsessed to particular things, and I am also obsessed to these particular PowerPoints. I do not know whether I am right or wrong. This is for you to judge, but I promise to all of you, I will do forward this to Dr. Anindya, and these are the 116 PowerPoints which I worked out on this particular empirical research methodology, formulation of hypothesis, and testing of hypothesis. This is very important. Last thing which I would like to share with you is legal research and methodology, both doctrinal and empirical, edited by Professor B.C. Nirmal, who is my very old friend from BHU Varanasi. Then he happened to be Vice Chancellor of National Law University Ranchi, where I went to deliver a number of lectures on research methodology to the postgraduate students. And my article is also contained in that. Please go through it. These are some of the materials which I wanted to share with you because that is very important to understand and comprehend. Now, straightway coming to now the topic which you have assigned to me with this particular background, so that what you are to refer and what you are not to refer. First of all, we should remember that we have moved from analytical positivism to empiricism. What does analytical positivism mean? Law professors, including me, we have been taught to this particular analytical positivism. Positivism, you know, is a school of thought, how to analyze the things in this legislative materials, rules, regulations, etc., decisional material, and other literature as a commentary on that particular piece of legislation and legislative policies and administrative behavior to implement such policies. Our judges also, in my book, if you like, you can have it, Dr. Nindya, in your library, Expounding Constitutionalism in India. This I had divided in 7-8 chapters published by this Thomson Reuters, an internationally reputed publisher. I have analyzed it, how our judiciary was slow in interpreting the Constitution. It did not come to this your particular basic structure immediately, or this due process of law immediately, or inclusivity of a preamble with articles 19, 20, 21, 22. No. It has to pass slowly moving from empirical, analytical positivism to pragmatic approach, social engineering approach, and that is the precise reason that Justice Vivian Bowe's phrase contained in this particular 1954 judgment of the Supreme Court. And he writes, flashing the flaming sword of its inspiration. That is the job of the judiciary, what to do and what not to do. I am quoting all these things to you, my dear listeners, so that you should be aware of to this particular, how these particular things have moved. It was Germany who coined the phrase empiricism. It did not go to any other country like America or Australia or other places. It was Germany where they emphasized on this particular empiricism. Therefore, each and every word has to be understood very carefully and cautiously and conscientiously. So, therefore, empiricism has various names like empirical, socio-legal, social, cultural, political behavior, behavioralism, attitudinal approach to law, etc., etc. This is empiricism, that how we look at law, how the recipients feel about law, how the recipients feel the nerve of the law, whether it is really beneficial to them or not. So these are some of the things which are related to empiricism. Now, what is research now? When we talk about empiricism, what is research? Research is essential for the generation and perpetuation of knowledge. Perpetuation of knowledge. It is used to establish or confirm facts, reaffirm the results of previous work, solve new or existing problems, support theorems or development theorems. And methodology refers to the way we approach a problem to obtain its solution, which may also mean the way to conduct the research. Here comes empiricism. For example, I give you one example. Resolution of disputes by the tribals. You know, the tribals are there. They have their own nature of disputes. How they resolve it? They don't go to the court for resolution. They have in their own language called as jigra. You have to go and live with this your particular tribals in tribal areas. I give you one example of a renowned professor, late Shama Charan Dubey. He was at Sagar University, moved from Lucknow. Dr. Hari Singh Gaur took him from Lucknow, who was there at that time as a young lecturer in sociology, and appointed him before the age of 40 as a full-fledged professor of socio-anthropology in the sociology department of Sagar University. His book is there, living with the tribals, with them, adopting their behavior pattern, eating habits, etc. And then this is called participant observation, to observing them, how they live, how they resolve their disputes. This is very important in empiricism or in empirical study or socio-legal study, as you may like to call it. This is behavioral approach to law. May I ask you a question to all the participants? All of you are understanding me, Dr. Nindya? Is it okay? Should I go ahead? Dr. Nindya? Am I right?
Yes,
Should
sir.
I
Yes,
go
sir.
ahead?
You are audible and
Okay.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Am I audible to all? Okay.
Yes, sir, you are.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is voice is clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I give you another proposition to understand this particular empiricism or socio-legal study. Then I will come to formulation of unless and until you understand this particular background, you cannot comprehend how to formulate this particular hypothesis and testing them. Another proposition I give you: right to human dignity, a socio-legal study with special reference to interstate migrant workers. Who are migrant workers? I remember in 1974, I went to Ranchi, stayed in the guest house of BITS there, and this particular law conference was there, All India Law Teachers Conference. And on my way back from Ranchi to Jammu, in my compartment, there were a number of tribals sitting there. By curiosity, I asked them, where from you are, where would you be going? And they told me, this is a man who has borrowed us, the language which they used, borrowed us in their own language. I am using the English language. Paid our fare, which would be deducted from our wages when we reach the destination. This was an awakening call bell to me. What does it mean? And then I worked on this particular, Supreme Court's this particular department was there looking to legal aid cell, whose first chairman was late Justice P.N. Bhagwati. And I got rupees 10,000 this amount to run this particular legal aid clinic in my university, whose founding director I was. And we went to the area in my own region, that how these migrant workmen live, how they are given wages, and how they are behaved, and how they were treated, and to their dignity, to their personality, to their person. In one tin shed, men and women were made to live along with their small kids. And in a corner, there was a kitchen prepared where they were to prepare their these meals. And then carrying their kids in lap and then making them to sleep or lie down on the roadside where they were working, I was shocked that how they were behaved. Is it human dignity to the migrant worker? Was it not exploitation? If you read the language of Constitution preamble, because the human dignity word which is assured to the we the people of India, that is only assured human dignity. Migrant workmen don't have the human dignity to live. This is the way I am giving you this particular proposition to conduct a study. And after traveling all the areas, I made a comprehensive report forwarding to the legal aid cell of the Supreme Court under the chairmanship of late Chief Justice of India, Justice P.N. Bhagwati, and he appreciated it. This is the way how these particular thing. So what is your factors which make the migrant workers to shift from one place to and go to other place? Economic factors, social factors, political factors, and what are the basis of exploitation of, I emphasize the word exploitation. Another proposition which comes to my mind, can we call them underserved sections of the society of India? This I leave up to the listeners and decide. Now coming to the Constitution of India. You know, under the Constitution, the basic structure is a federal structure under the Indian Constitution. I have formulated a scheme how it is to be conducted empirically, socio-legally. I just move slowly so that those who are interested, they can note down. Constitutional culture provides a roadmap for building national unity and integration to strengthen the federal structure of the Constitution of India, having, note down these words, having the genesis of mutually friendly, reciprocal interdependence on each other and not independent from each other. I repeat, mutually friendly, reciprocal, interdependent on each other. Preposition is on, and not independence from each other. Another is preposition is from. Now, if I give you this hypothesis, how would you conduct the study? You are to study the legislative behavior, you are to study the administrative behavior, and you are to study this particular another type of behavior. So that legislative behavior, administrative behavior, how the law is made, under what circumstances, and how the state, including union territories and the center, feel about this particular proposition. Are they really mutually reciprocal, friendly to each other? Or they are annoying to each other? You listen to the problem, hear to the problem. This state says so and so to the center, center says so and so to the state and union territory. What is this? I give you one example from my union territory, Jammu Kashmir. It's a very alarming proposition. You know, under the Reorganization of State Act, Jammu Kashmir state was reorganized in two union territories. Jammu Kashmir Union Territory 1, Ladakh Territory 2nd. And in our union territory, the voice against union territory is only raised from the valley and not at all from other regions of Jammu Kashmir Union Territory. And you know what is the voice raised? Restore the previous status. Why? What is wrong with the union territory? This is a blame game which we should try to avoid. Because financially, legislatively, administratively, center, states, union territory, they are interdependent on each other. So is the case with state to state, state to state, state to union territory to state. Without that, nothing can develop. So therefore, I give you this particular proposition as a hypothesis for you to test. I will go side by side later on how to do all this thing. Now, another particular point I would like to ask you, and this is with regard to transgenders. You know, there is a famous case by the Supreme Court of India on the transgenders. Very important case. I have analyzed it, which was published in the Journal of NLUJ. And note down this hypothesis. Please note down. Human right to human dignity of transgenders. Human right to human dignity of transgenders. A socio-cultural legal study in Indian society. First of all, my dear friends, you have to comprehend and understand very carefully, cautiously, who are transgenders, in which particular area they live, to which particular community they belong. I give you particular approach to do a detailed study of these particular transgenders. I give you one proposition which should be taken as a hypothesis. Transgenders are dealt with dignity, number one. Transgenders are permitted to contain their dignity in the society. Next, transgenders get adequate facilities in pursuing education, primary, secondary, higher. Transgenders are exposed to technical, scientific rhythm of the Indian society. These are very important areas. Transgenders get adequate opportunity to contest elections for the parliament and state legislature. These are some of the important areas which you have to comprehend. Do they get these adequate opportunities or not? This is later on to see that how they are to be tested. So my dear friends, these were some of the important things which I wanted to share with you. Now, recently, I have finished my manuscript on jurisprudence of experiential learning law. I do not know whether you ever heard before what is experiential learning law. This is a phrase I coined. What made me to coin this phrase? After participating in number of national workshops where I was invited as a resource person to make an in-depth study of the National Education Policy 2020, which has to move scientifically and with experience. Is there hardly 1.5 pages devoted to legal education? Hardly. It means legal education has least concern for the framers of national education policy. Should experiential approach to the dissemination of knowledge and assimilation of knowledge be not an essential part of legal education? Are you aware? In any of the law schools of India, in any of the law departments of the Indian University, any of the national law universities in the country, disseminate experiential learning law in their legal education program. Except moot court, they don't devote enough time in these particular things. That is the reason which compelled me to write this particular thing. This will be out by the end of this year. Therefore, students are to be made litigant lawyers when they come out of the law schools, law departments, law universities. Presently, unfortunately, We have contributed to the corporate sector or legal firms, but not as strong litigant lawyers. This is my perception with the in-depth experience in imparting legal education. And I'm very frank to share with you this particular thing. So therefore, my dear students, I give you few examples. With the dawn of the National Education Policy 2020, a new jurisprudence of experiential learning law shall be imperative in legal education in India, both for the faculty and litigant lawyers. Jurisprudence of experiential learning law is a paradigm shift from legal theory, that is theory of law, to practicum law. This is called experiential learning law. Experiential learning law is a new lexicon, that is a new legal dictionary in jurisprudential thought. Experiential learning law shall provide a new gamut, extent, and breadth and intent to the litigant learners to come out of the stage of deaf, dumb, and silent and be votary of speech and expression in law learning. ELL shall ignite the litigant law learners a new thinking about law, thinking of law, thinking in law, and thinking to live with law. These are the hypotheses which I wanted to share with you before I could give you theoretical approach to formulating the hypothesis, so that with this practical background, you will be able to comprehend all these particular things nicely. This is my belief, this is my perception. So, well, friends, in social sciences research, techniques applied in legal science, that is non-doctrinal empirical. Social science research enables us to find out the deficiency, lacunae in law, policy framework, and the problems of its implementation, what the armchair speculations fail to achieve. Lawmaker, while sitting in bureaucratic office, looking to the law framed by the Parliament of England or other countries, and then making its own law in India. What is our original thought? The statement which I am making a very conscious about it with a complaint. This had happened, and now this is not happening. This is the importance of this particular approach. An armchair speculation, that should not be done. For example, I give you one example. I conducted a study under the major research project granted by UGC, Trial Courts Trial. This was the title which has been published, Trial Courts Trial. That I was trying to make the trial of the trial courts, the basic courts, with the basic premise, listen to it very carefully, delay is a riddle. Delay is a riddle wrapped in mystery inside an enigma. How the delay happens, whether the egg comes out of the hen or hen comes out of the egg, this in nutshell is the meaning of this particular hypothesis. How the delay is caused, how the cases are managed, who makes the final date of the next hearing, who purlines, chori kaun karta hai, who purlines, who dominates the trial courts in fixing the date. All these particular things, I made an in-depth study while making visits to the district courts, courts below the district courts in my then state of Jammu Kashmir, right from Jammu to Ladakh, going up to this particular Andaman Nicobar, watching all these activities. And at that time, computer had come, but there the computers were dumped in a corner of the courtroom and covered with this your particular cloth, and the dust was to pile there. I have all mentioned all this. Another example I give you, armchair speculation. While conducting doctorate study, I went to valley to collect the data. I went to Bamina factory. Bamina is an area where this woolen factory is there in the valley. And this is called participant observation. And there I asked a question to the workers working on looms, electronic looms for weaving the woolen clothes. And there I posed the question, क्या आपको बखूबी रोशनी मिलती है? सब इन्होंने दिए हैं। तो एक वर्कर ने क्या कहा, देखो जरा मेरे एक्शन को, उनको रोशनी आने से हमको रोशनी आ गया। आई कुड नॉट अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट डिड ही मीन बाय दैट। मैंने उससे कहा एक बार फिर रिपीट करें। उसने फिर कहा उनको रोशनी आने से हमको रोशनी आ गई। 3 बार मैंने क्वेश्चन किया, 3 बार उन्होंने यही रिप्लाई दिया। जब 3rd बार उसने उंगली ऊपर की तो आई रेज्ड माय हेड एंड आईज अबव। 500 megawatt bulb was on, and below that bulb was the portrait of Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah. तो कहता है उनको रोशनी आने से हमको रोशनी आ गई। And inside the power loom there was no lighting. As a researcher, whenever you go to conduct the research study in the field, carry a book with you, note down this thing, and I noted this thing, and I mentioned this thing in my thesis writing, which is titled as Administration of Workmen's Compensation Law, a socio-legal study in the states of J&K and Punjab at that time. These are some of the things which I am sharing with you, because I have conducted a lot of study in this particular empirical field. So therefore, my idea to share with you all these experiences, that so that I impart proper way to understand the formulation of the hypothesis and all these particular things. And law is never static. It is dynamic. It changes according to the socio-economic, political moves of the society. It is never static. There is one scholar, she's an economist, social scientist in Germany. She wrote a book, Gulnar Mehraj. And one chapter was on Asian drama. Title of the book is Asian Drama, and one chapter is on this particular India. She writes, please try to understand the basic hypothesis which she formulated. India is a soft state. When I read it, I was surprised. What does she mean by India is a soft state? And she explains why India is a soft state. There are numerous laws and numerous propositions and problems. And there is a least enforcement of any law to solve any problem. This was an eye-opener for me, why India was designated as a soft state. And we have to move from soft state to hard state. In Germany, there is a democracy. You live freely. But if you violate the law, you are not spared by the rod of the law. This is a hard state. Democracy to function with hard state, not with soft state. And so democracy is not successful if there is hard action, hard decision is not there. Whether someone may like or may not like, that is another thing. But this is very important and imperative. This is has to be understood. Now, in the formulation of hypothesis, dear scholars, you have to comprehend to formulate the research design. What are the major steps in research design empirically? And here will come hypothesis. Number 1, standard statement of purpose made in the form of formulation of research problem. Number 1, select a title. Select a title. Title is very important, and it has to be formulated very cautiously and carefully. More the good literature you read, more the good problem you will be able to formulate in the form of title. As I have mentioned to you, ELL, experiential learning law, shall improve the pedagogy of law in content and intent. This is the title. Jurisprudence of experiential learning law. This is the title. Experiential learning law is a paradigm shift from theory, legal theory, to practicum. That's a practical approach to law. Without that, nothing can be done and law would not be carefully understood. Therefore, there had hitherto been a progressive movement from analytical positivism to empiricism. I'm not biased because I have conducted maximum empirical research. I'm not biased. I'm practical in my approach and I'm practical in my presentation. After this title, another care has to be taken. Selection of research problem empirical. I have shared some problems with you. Again, I repeat. Human right to human dignity of the transgenders, colon, a socio-cultural legal sections, a study of sections of Indian society. What is the background characteristics of the transgenders? How they are treated politically, socially, culturally, economically, educationally, in jobs, in pursuing the education, in conducting the PhD studies or doctorate studies or science, technology, or do they get such facilities being transgenders? Or they are to do the activities had they been doing right from their family to family to family traditions? This is a very good area. If someone of you take it up, I think you would be doing a pioneering contribution in the field of law. Human right to human dignity of the transgenders. Why they are ignored? What for they are ignored? Why they are not given adequate opportunities to contest the elections? Are they not to be treated equally? Equality before the law and equal protection of the laws? Are these phrases not meant for the transgenders? These are the things. This is one example I am giving you how to formulate the problem. And I have given you one problem. Then on the basis of this, you are to formulate research problem. Problem is very important when you write introduction. First point, you introduce your area of research. Then you pose a problem. Then you pose objectives and aims. What you want to achieve through this particular study. And you mention the sentence like this. This study aims at colon A, B, C, D. What it aims at. What you want to achieve through this study. And then next step is to you review the literature. I'm very sorry to say, you may agree, you may disagree, choice is yours. These days, teachers teaching research methodology, they emphasize, the research scholars, to write separate chapter on literature review. Why? This should be part of introduction. I have conducted so many, but this you are empirical studies, socio-legal studies, behavioral approaches to law, attitudinal approaches to law, and all this literature I have reviewed, that is in the introduction. Let it be 30 pages, 20 pages, 25 pages, or 35 pages maximum. Why a separate chapter? So and so has written this thing, so and so has written this thing. And you know, when I was conducting, I'm sharing all these particular things so that personal experiences of the senior teacher, if they are shared honestly, I think the listeners, participants would also follow. This is my belief. And there was Professor Walter Gellhorn. I do not know how many of you have heard his name. He was an international authority on administrative law and administrative process. I wanted his study and some other literature. I requested him, wrote him a letter. At that time, email was not there. I'm talking of 70s. Then, at that time, we were supposed to wait for 1 month or 2 months to receive the reply back. And after 1 month, I received the letter along with the big parcel. When I received it, I opened it. All books, literature, journals were there, and it gave me maximum happiness. And you know the phrase is there? Maximum happiness of the maximum number of people. With the least friction. This is the way you are to conduct empirical study, not without that. Then, formulating the hypothesis, next point. How the hypothesis ought to be formulated. Remember, dear friends, hypothesis has always to be in positive and never negative. Always positive, never negative. How the positive hypothesis to be formulated? I give you some proposition. Wait for a second. I give you one hypothesis. Experiential learning law shall ignite the litigant law learners a new thinking about law, thinking of law, thinking in law, and thinking to live with law. This is a positive hypothesis. Now you have to go to the field to test it. That mechanism is different. That I will let you know briefly and shortly. Students which are admitted to the law schools, we should presume them as future litigant learners and litigant lawyers. If they have the background of experiential learning law, when they come out of the law schools, they would serve the litigants more diligently. And they may not need to have the training at different sources. Therefore, this is a hypothesis to be tested. Experiential learning law will have an everlasting impact on litigant learners, in as much as when a tree causes seeds upon the wind, some fall close by, while others go to unknown places, and the tree knows, though, that because of its seeds, there will always be more trees. For example, if a would-be litigant learner or lawyer is given adequate training in all the gamuts of law, theory, practice, in every aspect, that is a different technique which shall be seen in my forthcoming book. For example, if such a litigant learner comes from the hands of a teacher, any one of you, it's just throwing the seeds at different places. And those seeds will bloom, and they would become new tree in the field, in the area, in practice. Would it not be a contribution to the legal field? Would it not be a contribution to this particular legal education? Would it not be a contribution to the practicum approach to law? This is how the hypothesis to be formulated, always in the positive and never in the negative. For example, I gave you the proposition, how to formulate hypothesis in positive. I take the example of transgenders. Human right to human dignity of transgenders, a socio-cultural legal study in Indian society. How would you formulate the hypothesis in positive to this particular proposition? Transgenders get adequate opportunity to flourish in the society. This is hypothesis in positive. Now, what is the variable in this? Variable adequate. This may be do not get adequate opportunity or get adequate opportunity when you will test in the market. And this would give you the adequate results. Now, another point, hypothesis. Transgenders are fairly treated by the non-transgenders in Indian society. Now, fairly treated. Fairly treated, positive. Not fairly, not word you have not used in this hypothesis. But the results may come out not fairly treated by the non-transgenders, men and women. Transgender is a third gender. So therefore, that is the point which you may have to comprehend very carefully, diligently, when you go to the market to test it. Another hypothesis. Transgenders get adequate opportunities to pursue education, elementary, higher, and this your particular further studies. Whether they get or not, this is to be tested in the field. So, well, students, these are some of the important points which I wanted to share with you in formulating the hypothesis. What is this question? Please raise it once again. Show me.
Sir,
was one question.
Varun Kumar
So one of the
says,
participants have asked.
Pardon?
One of the participants has asked, sir, why can't we have negative hypothesis?
Well, yes, very good question. If you more negative, then negative results will come. If you go by negative hypothesis, a negative result you will come because you will go with the mind, with the basic mind that this thing is not happening, this thing is not happening. You go with the positive mind, this is happening. Let the results come adverse, no problem. That is the reason negative hypothesis is never. Am I clear, dear students? Clear?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Varun
sir.
ji clear? Varun clear?
Yes, sir.
Shri
Thank you
Gauri
so much.
clear? Japan Babu clear?
Yes, sir.
Chatraji clear? So should I go ahead now? Should I go ahead, Varun? Okay. Thank you very much. No, thank you very much. That's a good point. Another point which you have to note down, how the hypothesis formulated. First of all, you have to understand what is hypothesis. Hypothesis is an assumption. Try to understand the language. Hypothesis is an assumption. Is speculation. Is hunch. Formulated not in the air or vacuum, but on the basis of literature. For example, I have given you the hypothesis of transgenders. Did I make these hypotheses in vacuum or in the air? No. Before conducting this lecture, I have been working for the past couple of days, day and night, and formulating the hypothesis which I am presenting before. with the new formulation, with the new approach, not with the old approach. What are the bases? For example, marginalized persons of the society, or you call as underserved sections of the society. Who are marginalized? They are also called underserved, or scheduled castes marginalized, or scheduled tribes marginalized. No, the word is used SEBC, socially, economically backward classes of the Indian society. How you will make the hypothesis for ST, SC, and SEBCs? These days problem is coming up again and again before the Supreme Court. After Ashok Kumar Thakur versus Union of India, a case of 2008, Supreme Court has once for all resolved who are minorities and what this percentage has to be accorded. And they have very clearly, categorically mentioned reservation is to be made on the basis of the status of these marginalized persons according to the ratio of a state, not of the center state, and not exceeding more than 50%. Not at all. No, from some states it is coming, this particular is to be incorporated, this is to be included, this is to be included. If everything is to be included, should India become 100% reserved category? And what about others? Think aloud, think loudly, think loudly. We should not be swayed away by the prepositions of some thinkers. We are to think it practically and not non-practically. So therefore, these are some of the things which I am presenting before you, marginalized sections of the society. And when hypothesis to be formulated, who were the framers of the Constitution of India? The members of the Constituent Assembly. I call them, they were the architects of the Constitution of India. They were the original authors of the Constitution of India. Dr. Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee where 7 members were there, including Sir B.N. Rao. What was their approach? Originally, there were 3 clauses of Article 15, Clause 1, Clause 2, Clause 3. There was no Clause 4, 15 Clause 4, there was no. And therefore, in first case, Champakam Dorairajan case, 1951, very important case. Supreme Court decided with the proposition of egalitarian society. And then egalitarian concept was done away with by the introduction of Clause 4. And when you are to formulate the hypothesis, then formulate on the basis of Clause 4. And on Ashok Kumar Thakur 2008 case, their Supreme Court again reiterated the concept, perception of egalitarian society. I give you one example, living example of my person. It was experience to me, first-hand experience, long back. I think it was in 1982 or 84, when I went under a UNO Human Rights Fellowship to France and Germany and Switzerland. And you know, when you come out of the airport, you are to pass through the your immigration section, and you are made to stand. And these days we observe during COVID-19 distance of 2 meters. At that time, nobody was to go close to each other. Everybody was allowed to maintain the distance of 2 meters. At that time, COVID-19 was unheard. And when my turn came before the immigrant officer, he looked to my passport, he looked to my document, and he asked me, "Oh, you are professor of law. We are very sorry to make you stand and wait. Please come, please come." I could understand what is the honor and dignity of a professor. At that time, I realized it in my own country. मालूम है मुंशी प्रेमचंद की लैंग्वेज में क्या कहते हैं? जब मुंशी प्रेमचंद की डेथ हुई तो कोई 4 लोग भी नहीं थे कंधा देने के लिए अर्थी को, तो कहने लगे को कोई मास्टर बेचारा, बेचारा वर्ड यूज करिए। इन इंडिया आप चाहे स्कूल टीचर हैं, कॉलेज टीचर हैं, यूनिवर्सिटी के प्रोफेसर हैं, अब मास्टर ही है ना, मास्टर ही है तो है, वो तो कुछ नहीं। No, this is not the way how these persons are to be treated, marginalized. Framing the hypothesis. तो आप फ्रेम कैसे करेंगे पॉजिटिव वे में? एम्प्लॉयमेंट में उनको देनी है रिजर्वेशन, you have to give them adequate reservation in this your educational institution admission, etc. तो उस there you have to formulate positive hypothesis. They get ample opportunities. Ample word लगा लीजिए instead of adequate, write ample word. So you go with the proposition everything is good, everything is goody goody, nothing goes against the law. But when you go for testing, when the results will come to you, then you will realize whether adequate ample opportunities were provided or not. The results may be not, results may be yes. So therefore, hypothesis is to be formulated on these particular things, and therefore it is based on not mere assumption in the air. ख्याली पुलाव नहीं है hypothesis, ख्याली पुलाव ये किसकी सहायता से बनता है? लेजिस्लेटिव मटेरियल, डिसीजनल मटेरियल, ये सारे हैं। I give you one hypothesis. I forgot the name of that author. Title of the book is Views from the Bench. Views from the Bench. I forgot the name of the author. There he writes, judges of the superior court are right because they are senior, and not senior because they are right. अब देखिए ये प्रपोजिशन है, क्योंकि वो सीनियर हैं, ऑनरेबल है, इसलिए वो जो कहेंगे राइट है। तो कैसे उनको जज करना है? This preposition, please read from the book Views from the Bench about the behavior pattern of the judges of the Supreme Court of America. I forgot the name of the author. Sorry for that thing, but I am quoting from that. Yes, I correct this statement. Judges of the superior court are right because they are superior. No doubt. Judges of the higher courts are right because they are superior, comma, not superior because they are right. This is a proposition which I am presenting before you. Is it made on hunch, mere hunch? Is it made on in air? No. This is based on the experience of the judges themselves. And judge is writing about his own brethren that they are right because they are superior, not superior because they are right. Judge becomes superior if he is right. Judge does not become right because he is superior. This is the way how you are to formulate the hypothesis. Varunji, am I right? Are you listening to me? Varun, Renu, Shri Gauri, Ishita Chatterjee.
Yes, sir. Renu here. I am listening carefully.
Are you clear about this hypothesis?
Yes, sir.
Very good, very good.
Yes, sir, we are clear.
And,
Okay.
and sir, it's interesting you're talking about behavioral dimensions as well.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
unique.
Hypothesis should have variables, two variables, note down. Independent variable and dependent variable. What is independent? Age is independent, sex is independent, education is independent, occupation is independent. Now, what is dependent? Other than these are dependent on sex, age, etc., etc. How? For example, let us go with the same hypothesis. Judges of the superior courts are right because they are superior, not superior because they are right. You go to the persons to know the views, like advocates, law students, law researchers, law professors, legislators, bureaucrats, police, law enforcement agencies, etc., etc. Now, according to the age, according to the education, according to their background, rural background, urban background, etc., etc., when you will come out with their responses, they will vary. Therefore, independent variable and dependent variable. 50 साल का एक रिस्पांस देगा, 30 साल का एक रिस्पांस देगा, 70 years का ओल्ड पर्सन एक रिस्पांस देगा. It varies because of the experiences in age. Education एक अनपढ़ा illiterate है, एक 8th क्लास पास है, एक 10th क्लास पास है, एक ग्रेजुएट है, एक पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट है, एक डॉक्टरेट है. आप देखेंगे हर एक के रिस्पॉन्सेज अलग अलग. तो इसलिए ये जो रिस्पॉन्सेस हैं ये डिपेंड किस पे करते हैं? एज वेरिएबल पे, सेक्स वेरिएबल पे. वुमेन का अलग रिस्पॉन्स होगा, मैन का अलग रिस्पॉन्स होगा. हमारे समय में ट्रांसजेंडर्स होते नहीं थे. जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट की जजमेंट आने के बाद ट्रांसजेंडर्स की नई प्रपोजिशन आ गई, और ये होनी भी चाहिए सोसाइटी में. क्यों नहीं होनी चाहिए? Well, participants, these are some of the things. For example, I give you another hypothesis, positive. Delay a riddle. केसेस का जो डिसीजन है वो एक पहेली है. डिले इज ए रिडल, रैप्ड इन मिस्ट्री. मिस्ट्री में बंधी हुई है, रैप्ड इन मिस्ट्री, इनसाइड एन एनिग्मा. आप इसको साधारण भाषा में परिभाषित कर सकते हैं. whether hen comes out of the egg or egg comes out of the hen. What are the various causes of delay? How it happens? I conducted a study with my research scholars, 2 research scholars, and that was published in the Indian Law Institute Journal with the same title, Delay, Riddle, Wrapped in Mystery, Inside an Enigma. You can consult the Journal of Indian Law Institute. This was published and duly acknowledged. I received a number of compliments on that particular thing. So therefore, these are some of the things how to formulate. एडवोकेट का अलग रिस्पॉन्सेस था, जजेस का अलग रिस्पॉन्सेस था. अब जैसे सिविल केसेस हैं, हियरिंग डेट इज डिमांडेड जस्ट ऑन डिमांड. नो डाउन. नेक्स्ट हियरिंग डेट इज granted just on demand. Is it right? Who is managing this your date management? According to the choice of the advocate, or according to the choice of the judge, or according to the reader attached with the judge, or according to the personal secretary attached to the judge? वो मैं आपसे शेयर नहीं कर सकता. मेरा बेटा एडवोकेट है, कई कहानियां बतलाता है. I can't share those things with you. Those are the secrets of the practice. But I'm telling you how you can move ahead, how you can go ahead with these particular propositions. So therefore, hypothesis is qualitative and quantitative. What is qualitative? ये जितने मैंने आपको, my dear this your listeners, faculty members, जितने भी मैंने hypothesis बतलाए, they are all qualitative. They are all qualitative. And then quantitative. On the basis of qualitative hypothesis, when you go to the field to collect data, that I will come to give you idea on that just now after this particular thing I finish. When you collect data, for example, you want to collect data on 500 participants or 1000 participants or 300 participants or 200, manageable, what you can manage, that I will tell you how to manage. So therefore, that is qualitative is to be quantified. Qualitative is to be quantified and quantified is to be qualitative. कैसे? You move from deductive, that's a deduction method, deducing the thing from the quality, from the theory. हर एक चीज गुडी गुडी है, everything is okay, everything is fine, nothing is wrong, nothing is bad. And from quality to quantity, quantify the data. And this is deduction. And then from quantity to quality, that's induction. What results you induce, what results you get, that is called inductive approach. And then becomes qualitative. Is equal to, write down empirical generalizations. This is called empirical generalizations. This is the way how you are to move from qualitative to quantitative, and quantitative to qualitative is equal to empirical generalizations. Well, let me sip a water for some time and just wait for it. Now, how to quantify the qualitative? Qualitative is a hypothesis हो गया, ठीक है. अब quantify कैसे करना है? First of all, you are to formulate the questionnaire or interview schedule. Questionnaire is mail. You don't go person to person and know their views. No. हमारे टाइम में तो by post भेजते थे, stamp लगा करके. These days you have email facility with you, you have WhatsApp facility with you, you have other facilities with you, and post them through email or WhatsApp or other sources and get their responses back. So this is one approach. Another is observation technique. Observation is participant and non-participant. What is participant observation? For example, when I started legal aid clinic cell in the Department of Law of University of Jammu, I went to this your particular sites along with the team of my students to know by hand what physical facilities were provided to the migrant workmen, whether they were adequate or not. This is going to the field, watching them, how they live under one roof shed, 20 to 25 or 50, along with their spouses, with their children, inside kitchen, everything. This is called participant. First-hand information. And non-participant means you just know their views through mail, etc. For example, I gave you one example. Living behavior, marriage behavior, dispute resolution behavior of the tribals. Late Professor Shyama Charan Dubey, a great international authority on this particular socio-anthropology. I'm very lucky that he was my vice chancellor, and he interviewed me for 1 hour for the sports staff associate professor. And he told me that if I came through his hands, then nobody could stop me. And I came through, and he was very happy. He lived amongst the tribals in the state of Madhya Pradesh, watching their marriage ceremonies, other ceremonies, dispute resolution. His books are there. Please go through that if you want to know participant observation. This is the way you learn. And non-participant, once again I told you example. उनको रोशनी आने से हमें रोशनी आ गई. I have given you example in the beginning. Same thing I repeat it here. Watching closely in person gives you lot of information. So this is observation. Third, you make interview diary. When you go in the field to collect the data, you maintain a diary. Something may not be included in your interview schedule or questionnaire. But when you go to the field, you may come across new things. And when you come back from the interview, sit in your room and then note down in the diary what did you observe, what did you find, which is not included. And that helps you to improve your hypothesis and improve your questionnaire in the later stage. There is nothing wrong to improve it. That is permissible. That is permissible. Now, before going to the field, आपने कितने लोगों को इंटरव्यू करना है, कितने लोगों से डाटा कलेक्ट करना है, कितने लोगों का ये व्यू लेना है हर एक चीज के ऊपर. तो there are 3 stages in the design of sample technique. Number 1, temporal. Temporal means time frame. 5 साल का करना है, 2 साल का करना है, 1 साल का करना है, 10 years का, which is manageable. Temporal design, sample designing. Second is special sample, SPATIAL. Special means geographical. किस एरिया में करना है, कितना है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, एक स्टेट में 20 districts है. Can you go to all 20 districts? No. You make a strata of those districts. 4 का करना है, 10 का करना है, कितने का करना है. That special, SPATIAL, special design sample. Third is universal. Universal means what is your universe? What is the population? Population में male, female, now transgenders, all will come. अनपढ़ भी आएंगे, पढ़े लिखे भी आएंगे, डॉक्टरेट भी आएंगे, इंजीनियर भी आएंगे. इस सैंपल का, यूनिवर्स का आपने स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन करना है, विच इज कॉल्ड स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन ऑफ डाटा. सबका तो नहीं कर सकते. दिस इज कॉल्ड स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन. सो देयरफॉर सैंपलिंग कितने प्रकार का है? हाउ मेनी? सिंपल रैंडम सैंपलिंग. नंबर 1, it is the form of applied when the method of selection assumes each element or individual in the universe an equal chance of being chosen. आप हर एक के पास तो नहीं जा सकते. आप मेल का करना है, फीमेल का उनका स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन कर लीजिए. सिंपल रैंडम सैंपलिंग वो कर लीजिए. 1, 10, 20 ऐसा कर लीजिए, या 1, 3, 6 इस तरीके से कर लीजिए. Either an odd or an even. I cannot teach you theoretically कि कैसे करना है. When you go to the field yourself on your proposition, on your problem, on your hypothesis test, with your questionnaire, with your interview schedule, with your diary, with your observation approach, all these things you will learn yourself. Then is a purposive sample. Purpose है. एक example देता हूँ, नाम नहीं लूंगा किसी scholar का. One of the scholar conducted a doctorate study, Khana Damad. यानी घर ज्वाई होते हैं ना, देयर कस्टम, एक कम्युनिटी है पर्टिकुलरली, they follow this habit of khana dama, which is available only in one district, which is not prevalent in whole of the area. This is called purposes because you belong to that area, you live in that area, therefore you select that area. What would be the results? Results would be biased. आप प्रिज्यूम करके चल रहे हैं ये होता क्योंकि you daily watch all those things. वो शादी कैसे करते हैं, डाइवोर्स कैसे लेते हैं, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा, वो दहेज कितना लेते हैं, ऑल द नंबर ऑफ थिंग्स आर देयर. दिस इज पर्पसेस. एंड आई नो व्हेन एक्सपर्ट केम, आई वाज हेड ऑफ डिपार्टमेंट एट द टाइम, डीन ऑफ द फैकल्टी. He told that scholar, well, you have done the doctorate thesis, we award you, but having no permission to publish because this is with bias approach. The purpose is this thing. Don't go with the purpose कि आपको मालूम है यही है, मैं बैठे बैठे यहाँ. या कई लोगों को क्या होता है, घर बैठे डाटा भरते जाते हैं फिल वो क्वेश्चनियर में. That is wrong approach. Never do that thing. Go to the field. I remember one of my scholars who retired as a professor of law. I made him to go to the field from place to place to collect the data of interstate migrant workers, and that thesis is published, recognized, quoted by a number of future scholars. Therefore, your work should be quotable. Your work should be quotable by others. That is the outcome of a good work, good research work. Not that way, simply doing because you belong to this thing. That is not. Third is stratified sampling. Interview schedule. Questionnaire is mailed. Interview schedule is by person. Now, how you will make interview schedule or questionnaire? Language would be the same, but design would be different. If you go by in person, interview schedule. If you mail, that is a questionnaire. First of all, on the top, you will write title of the research project. Then name and address of your other things. Then your this thing. I will come to your question, null hypothesis. Deliberately, I have not touched that point. The contents of question is socio. First of all, this thing. Then your address. Then name of this your particular Venkateshwar. I will come to you, please. And then your this particular name of the person to whom you are going to interview, his age, his occupation, his profession, his your economic background, area, rural, urban, sex, male, female. Now third is a transgender, or instead of transgender you write others. Don't write transgender because this may not nice somebody. First of all, this is called socio-economic background. So socio-economic background is independent variable. Independent variable. Awareness about law, this would be second step. Now, according to male, female responses would be different. According to education background, responses would be different. According to the rural, urban background, responses would be different. So therefore, this is called dependent variable on independent variable. So this is your awareness about law. Opinions, attitudes about multifarious aspects of law. Then general impressions about the function of law. Content aimed mainly at ascertaining facts about law. Contents aimed mainly at ascertaining beliefs about what the facts or law are. Essentials of good questionnaire or interview schedule: clarity, brevity, unambiguity, reliability, communicability. Direct questions should be avoided. Never ask direct questions. The language should be simple and easy to grasp, free from legalese or legal archaism which is not audible. Process of construction of questionnaire or interview schedule. Decide what information should be sought. Decide what type of questionnaire should be used, structured or unstructured. एक तो ओपन एंडेड होते हैं ना, एक क्लोज्ड होते हैं. यानी you suggest 1, 2, 3, 4 alternatives also to respond to the questionnaire. So this is the meaning of this your structured and unstructured. Write the fresh draft that is permissible. Re-examining and revising questions after getting the results. Pre-testing. Editing the questionnaire and specify procedure for its use. The question should not be few, short, clearly worded, simple and easy to reply, without jargons. Long, complex, personal, suspicious, and leading questions should be avoided. Interviewing respondents. It requires art and skill, not to move with preconceived notions. Please underline this particular point. Caution, never move with preconceived notions. Go with open mind. For example, delay riddle delay होती है, इसका ये रीजन है, इसका ये, अगर आप इससे जाएंगे तो what would be the results? Results would be according to your thinking, not according to the responses of the recipients of law. Never go with preconceived notions. Go with open mind. Some student has asked me null hypothesis. I would give that answer and then I go further. Wait for a second. Yes. Null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is simply the hypothesis of no difference or relationship. For example, there will be no statistically significant difference in career awareness means across between the career education classroom students and the traditional classroom students. This hypothesis shows that there is no difference between the groups unless statistically demonstrated otherwise. The null hypothesis is simply the scientifically stated phrase that can be statistically tested. This is your null hypothesis. That simply the scientifically stated phrase that can be statistically tested. This is your this thing. I think this will be sufficient for you. Then classification and tabulation of data. जब आप डाटा सब कलेक्ट करके ले आए, ऐसे रख दिया, आप पहले उसको सेक्स वाइज चलिए या एरिया बैकग्राउंड, रूरल अर्बन चलिए, कैसे भी चलिए, क्वालिफिकेशन के हिसाब से चलिए, इनकम स्ट्रक्चर से चलिए, तो आप ऐसा ग्राफ बना लीजिए, ऊपर लिख दीजिए क्वेश्चन क्या है. ओके वेंकटेशन, ओके, इट्स ओके, गॉड ब्लेस यू.
Thank you, sir.
It's okay, it's okay, please listen to me. If you are satisfied, I am satisfied. Now then you frame that. Here you write sex, male, female, others, this way. Then make a graph. Close. आपने एक क्वेश्चन उठाया, मेल ने क्या रिप्लाई दिया है, उसको टिक करते जाओ, यस और नो में. यस ऊपर लिख लो, यस नो, यस के नीचे टिक करते हो, 1 2 3 4 5 आया तो उसको ऐसे कर दो, ऐसे 1 2 3 4 5 आया, ये कामा, 1 2 3 4 5 कामा. फिर उसके बाद नो में आया 1 2 3 4 ऐसा. मेल फीमेल अदर्स में आया 1 2 3 4 5, टोटल कर लीजिए 20 15 5. तो हो गया आपका 20 15 5 टोटल कर लीजिए, आपके टोटल क्वेश्चन इतने थे, इतने का रिस्पांस आ गया, एंड हाउ यू विल इंटरप्रेट दैट? अकॉर्डिंग टू मेल द ओपिनियन इज लाइक दिस, ऐसे इंटरप्रेट करिए. अकॉर्डिंग टू फीमेल ओपिनियन इज लाइक दिस, others opined like this thing. Then make empirical generalization. Result क्या निकला, कॉमन अप्रोच क्या आई, उसको आप सामने लिखते, दैट इज कॉल्ड एम्पिरिकल जनरलाइजेशन. सो फर्स्ट फ्रॉम डिडक्टिव, डाटा स्टैटिस्टिकल, न्यूमेरिकल और क्वांटिफिकेशन, एंड देन इंडक्टिव, इंड्यूस कीजिए और आकर के ये रिजल्ट्स निकल गए. फर्स्ट इंडक्टिव, देन डिडक्टिव is equal to empirical generalization. Am I clear? Venkata Subramaniam ji, am I clear? Varun ji?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Clear, sir.
Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Okay. Then attitude. Suppose you have a question regarding attitude or regarding awareness about law. तो क्या करेंगे आप? उसी तरीके से कॉलम बनाएंगे. Then you will fill up those things 1 2 3 1 2 3, जो आपके रिस्पांस आपने सीख किए हैं उसी हिसाब से भरते जाएंगे. उसी हिसाब से 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5, that would be the responses. So deduct, first inductive, deductive, empirical generalization, that will be your results. This is the way. Well, my dear listeners and participants, I can't give you ample examples as they think. If we could have been in person, I could have used that green board or white board or PowerPoint and shows you the results there and then only. That could be more comprehensive, etc. Then scaleogram is also their technique, making the scales. आप कई बार न्यूज़पेपर में देखते हैं ना, या मैगजीन्स में देखते हैं, स्केल बनाते हैं या ऐसे छोटे से बड़े से ऐसा. That is also one other way. Or you make through graph also you can make out of that thing. This is all about your attitudinal approach जो है उससे है. और socio economic political legacy background of the judges and its impact on the judgment. What has been the socio economic political legacy background of a judge and its impact on the judgment? मैं आपको एक एग्जांपल देता हूं. फॉर एग्जांपल, in initial stages there were cases on article 31, right to property. Now there is no more right to property, fundamental right to property after 44th amendment. No more article 31. 31 was most contentious article of the constitution, and you know Supreme Court judges, all 13 judges, 7:6 ratio. That is, Parliament can amend the Constitution the way it likes, comma, but preposition is very important. But it cannot destroy the basic structure of the Constitution. I call it as foundational fundamentals. They cannot destroy. Its essential features cannot be destroyed. So behavior pattern. Those judges who were with landlord background, if you start reading from first case, you will find the approach was different. Subsequently, approach became different on Article 31. And slowly and gradually coming to this, your Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala 97th, the approach became absolutely different. A judge belonging to upper strata, his approach, if your reflections on the judgment would be different. Now, if you read about legends in law, there is a book, Legends in Law, very important book. And if you read Justice Vivian Bowe's approach to Article 142, what Article 142 is? To do complete justice. How the judiciary is to do complete justice, that is the armor of the Supreme Court judges, and not the judges below the Supreme Court judges. And while delivering the judgment, I had never come across such a beautiful wording in the judgment about Article 142. He says, within quote, flashing the flaming sword of its inspiration, As a student of law, I was not aware about this judgment. Virendra Singh versus State of Uttar Pradesh, 1954. When I came back from my foreign academic sojourn, I gave phone to my publisher that I want this particular book, Before Memory Fades, written by Fali Nariman, a senior most advocate of the Supreme Court of India and a living legend. Before Memory Fades, he wrote his autobiography, and there he quoted Justice Vivian Bose's quotation, which I have quoted you. Throughout the day I was reading, and at midnight, when I completed the book, I gave him an email, slept, got up in the morning. You know, when you sleep late, you get up late. Same was the thing with me. But when I got up, I opened my laptop and found first email response was from Fali Nariman. And you know what did I write to him? I wrote to him, to me it seems that Justice Vivian Bose has coined this phrase, which was initiation or beginning of this your particular public interest litigation. The name was not heard at that time in 1954. And you know, Fali Nariman, what did he reply? Yes, Professor, I agree with you. It depends how you interpret, what is your background. This is the way. Read Legends in Law and you will come across that how many persons were there who are known as legends in law. Nani Palkhiwa, courtroom genius and a legend in law. Soli Sorabji living is no more now. He was a legend in law. Number of examples can be given, whose judgments, when you go, it appears to us that those judges were superior because they were right, not right because they were superior, as I have mentioned you in my earlier stages of this lecture. So, content analysis and other analysis. So, this is the point. Before I conclude, I want to mention one thing. When you write or interpretation of your thesis or your dissertation or results of your this particular data, avoid plagiarism. Don't borrow one sentence. If you borrow, quote it, quote the authority. Nothing wrong to borrow, but quote the authority. But don't ignore quoting the authority. This is called plagiarism. I call it academic dacoity. I emphasize academic dacoity. Don't commit that because we are not dacoit academically. We are fine and we are to become refined. And the role of the supervisor, because most of you are teachers in law and you are to guide your students, scholars as supervisor. Your role is very important, and that is a role of philosopher, that is a role of friend, and that is a role of mentor of your researcher. Well, students, speaking for the last about 2 hours, now I feel myself tired, and I think you must also be feeling tired. With these words, I thank you all, and I think what was the task assigned to me, formulation of hypothesis and testing of hypothesis. I started with the research, empirical research, etc., etc. And I'm thankful to Dr. Anindya and other professor who introduced me and others. So thank you very much indeed, and I'm much obliged. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It was indeed a wonderful session. We all enjoyed. And the questions which were addressed by you, sir, was excellent. I believe the participants have been satisfied with their questions and with their queries. Thank you, sir, so much for accepting our invitation to be a part of this faculty development workshop. Thank you so much on behalf of the university and behalf of School of Law.
Thank you very
Abhinav,
much.
sir. Abhinav, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Abhinav. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anindya, I will send you PowerPoints.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Email you.
The moment you send it, I will distribute it with all the participants.
Okay. But with my name, nobody should make
Absolutely, sir.
plagiarism of that I mentioned. That is
No, no, sir.
that should
all
not
the
be.
faculties here are
Okay,
responsible.
okay,
It will not be plagiarized
Okay,
anywhere. I believe, sir.
okay. Thank you very much. All the best and God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I'm sharing the feedback link in this chat box for all the participants. Thank you, sir.
Anindya sir, you post the attendance also in the group.
Ma'am,
so
your
that
voice is breaking.
I'm saying that kindly post the attendance also in the
Ma'am,
group. and
posting attendance
participants
takes
are
some time,
Yeah, you can post it later on also.
and
after the
there is
session gets
a
over.
problem that participants. Yeah.
Yeah, participants are requested to fill the feedback form regularly because we are in requirement of feedback forms also. Participation and filling of the feedback form both are mandatory.